Sunday, August 19th, 2018, maneco64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today it's going to be a bit of fun, this video, but at the same time you're going to see why I'm a contrarian and how I got that from my father. And I'm going to talk about something my dad and I did 43 years ago, back in 1975. Some of you might know that I'm a keen golfer, but my father was a keen sailor. He started out when he was a teenager sailing for other people. He did ocean races, like Buenos Aires Rio race. He sailed from Bermuda to Copenhagen, and eventually he started doing well in his career and he bought his own boat. The boat he loved the most, really, the sailboat that he loved the most, was the Star boat. It's a two-man boat. It used to be an Olympic boat, and you have the skipper, who my dad was the skipper, it was his boat, and you have the crew. And you need a big, heavy person to be the crew because the winds out there can get really, you need someone to come out and get the boat. You can't have the boat listing too much. So you need someone who's big, strong, heavy. And the story I'm going to tell you is interesting. And I think it's what made me a contrarian, and with the help of my father, of course. And as you can see here, I also sailed. I got my first sailboat or dinghy. My godfather gave it to me as a birthday present. You can see me there, June of 1973, in my sailboat, an Optimist pram. And it was wooden boat. And I called it, guess what, Maneco. It was called Maneco, my sailboat. And it was actually built by the carpenter, the yacht club in ETHEREUM, which is near Rio, on the other side of the bay. We had our own carpenter, and his name, the guy's name was Emilio. I don't remember his surname, but he was Spanish. And at that time, a lot of the boats were still wooden boats. There were fiberglass boats, but so they needed a lot of repairs. And he was a great craftsman, this guy, and he built really beautiful boats. So that's my boat there, June 1973, you can see. And my father, of course, he sailed the Star boat, and there's him and I think that was around 1968, so I was only about 3 or 4, and my dad we drove down all the way from Rio to Buenos Aires, Argentina. My dad went to sail, I think it must have been the South American Championships, and there we are on his boat. I think he was we just arrived, and he was putting the mast on the boat, fixing the boat for the race. And yeah, he was very competitive as well, like me. He used to like playing, like I love playing golf tournaments. He used to do a lot of sailing championships. So that's me and him in probably 1968, and then there's me in 1973. And then I always kept telling my dad, oh, I want to sail in the Star boat, when I was 8 or 9. And he said, oh, you're too small. It's too windy. You're not going to be able to bring the boat, back, if it's listing, if it's too windy. But then, back in 1975, he decided to take me on the Star boat for a race. And this race was interesting. It was called, and it's still going on today, Darque de Matos. It's a very prestigious race in Rio, and they do it every year. And at the time, as you can see here in this map, a lot of the races in Rio, we would sail outside the bay. You can see the bay, Guanabara Bay there, and we'd go out into the Atlantic. But I couldn't go race with him in the Atlantic. It was really rough and windy. So as a 10-year-old, he would be handling the boat all on his own. But this race happened to be in Guanabara Bay. And I don't remember exactly, but he probably knew that day, that morning before we left to do the race, that it wasn't going to be very windy. It was going to be in the bay, so he decided to take me. And I was really happy. I even said, "Dad, can I be the skipper?" And he said, "No, no, you're going to be the crew." But so this race, unlike normal sailboat races, the Olympic circuit is usually like a triangle, as you can see here. This race was more like we started off by there's an airport in Rio here in the bay, and we start off, go up the bay under the bridge there that you can see, 101, the Rio-Niterói bridge. And then I don't know exactly where we tacked, where you turn around in the buoy, but it was roughly around there. And I remember, I don't know how many boats there were, maybe 12, 20 boats or thereabouts. And we didn't turn too badly. We weren't last, but we weren't first. But one thing I noticed right away, all the boats decided to go back the same way they went, on the side of Rio de Janeiro, the city. And we lived on the other side, on a place called Niterói, across the bay. And I always remember that at the time, my mom used to take me sometimes after school to have some tennis lessons. And at some tennis courts by the bay. And I always remember it was really windy all the time. So when we tacked around the buoy, I just said to my dad, "Dad, why don't we go towards Niterói?" And he said, "What are you talking about? Everyone's going down back to Rio in the straight line. And you want to go, you don't want to go in a straight line?" And I said, "Well, Dad, I play tennis there a lot. It's always really windy. Why don't we just go that way?" And he listened to me and decided to do it. So that was the contrarian view. And I remember when we started moving towards Niterói, and you could see all the other boats, there were like hundreds and maybe a mile away on the other side. And it didn't look very good. They're all there behind each other, and we were like all the way on the other side of the bay. But then when we got to near Niterói, my dad tacked the boat, and we started heading towards Rio. And the end of the race was by the Naval College or Naval School in Rio, which is near the airport there. And then he tacked, and we kept going. And then the closer we got to the finish line, all of a sudden, all the other boats were like way behind us, so to speak, and we won. And it was amazing. It was a great feeling. And but what it taught me was that sometimes you got to do things differently, and maybe that's why I'm a contrarian. That's why I wanted to talk about this story. It's a great story for me, and to let you know a little bit more about myself. I found the results of this race. It's a race that started at the Rio Yacht Club back in 1945, as you can see here. And my dad, actually, I didn't realize it. I just saw it, that he won it also in 1973 with someone else, and then in 1975 with me. My dad's boat was Bounty. It was called Bounty. For some reason, they didn't get my name on there, but you can bet it was me. I wouldn't lie about that. And I would argue that I'm probably the youngest winner as a crew of that race. I mean, 10 years old. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an idea of who I am and why, I'm a contrarian. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter. Have a great rest of the weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.